Before we begin this week's episode of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, I want to tell you of a great guide that I made just for you. It's the 12 financial mistakes that keep physicians from building wealth. After talking to hundreds of physicians, I've heard many mistakes, and these are the ones that I thought were most important to share so that you can potentially avoid making these mistakes, or if you've already made them, learn a bit about how you might be able to recover. You can grab the guide at my website, www.growyourwealthymindset.com/12 financial mistakes. Now on to this week's episode. Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Zhang. Welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, the podcast where we explore what it means to create a life of abundance, financially, emotionally, and mentally. Today's episode focuses on being in flow, the 8th activity from the book, The How of Happiness by Dr. Sonja Lubomirski. I think this month's happiness activity is a fun one, and honestly, one of the most rewarding. Let me start by asking you this. Have you ever been so absorbed in something you were doing that you completely lost track of time? Maybe you were working on a project, playing an instrument, gardening, or even reorganizing your space. You didn't notice you skipped lunch. You weren't checking your phone. Nothing else seemed to matter. That is what it feels like to be in a state of flow. The term flow was coined by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which I'm probably butchering how to pronounce that. He began researching flow in the 1960s while studying the creative process. He noticed that when painters were immersed in their work, they would ignore hunger, discomfort, and even fatigue. But as soon as the painting was finished, their interest would fade. What he discovered was that the act of painting itself, not the outcome, was what brought the greatest joy. The process itself was intrinsically rewarding. When we're in flow, we're fully immersed. We're challenged just enough to stretch our abilities, but not so much that we feel overwhelmed. And when the balance is just right, we feel like we're performing at our best. Time seems to fly, distractions fall away, and we're completely in the moment. The sweet spot between boredom and anxiety is where flow lies. The more time we spend in that state, the happier we tend to be. It creates a natural high that's positive, productive, and in your control. It doesn't come with guilt or shame. It doesn't hurt you or anyone else. And it makes you feel a sense of mastery and meaning. But here's the thing. As we get better at something, that activity may get easier and stop providing the challenge needed to enter flow. That's when it becomes important to seek out new challenges, to stretch your skills in new ways. It's all about constantly learning, growing, and evolving. Happiness doesn't just come from achieving a goal. It comes from enjoying the process of getting there. As Csikszentmihalyi said, quote, "There is no inherent problem in our desire to escalate our goals as long as we enjoy the struggle along the way," end quote. When we're too focused on the outcome, we lose the joy of the present moment. So how do we invite more flow into our lives? Start by becoming more intentional with your attention. When you're engaged in something that challenges you in a good way, whether it's at work, at home, or in your free time, give it your full focus. What you pay attention to becomes your experience. Flow requires that your attention be fully on the task at hand. If you find yourself bored, your mind may drift. If you feel overwhelmed, you may start focusing on your limitations instead of the activity. That's why learning to direct and control your attention is so important. Another way to live more in flow is to stay open to new experiences. This could mean learning a new skill, joining a new group, or trying something outside your comfort zone. It helps to have a mindset of curiosity and growth, like you're a lifetime learner. I think many of us physicians tend to be lifetime learners, so hopefully this is something that's somewhat easy for us to do. And sometimes we don't even realize when we're in flow. You may be experiencing it more often than you think. Start paying attention to those moments where time disappears and you feel completely engaged. Even the most routine or boring tasks can be transformed. You can create microflow moments by turning mundane activities into small games or challenges. Maybe you sing while you clean, solve puzzles in your head while commuting, or tap out rhythms of your favorite songs. These small shifts can make a big difference in your experience. Flow isn't limited to solo activities either. You can absolutely experience it in a conversation. Try to focus your full attention on what the other person is saying. Resist the urge to jump in or think ahead about your response. Instead, prompt them to go deeper. Ask follow-up questions like, "And then what happened?" Or, "Why did you feel that way?" Set a goal for yourself to truly understand them better. That kind of intentional listening can create meaningful connections and flow. Now let's talk about how we spend our free time, what little free time we may or may not have. Think about your leisure hours. Are you scrolling through social media, watching TV, or checking emails without really being present? There's nothing wrong with decompressing after a long day. But how long does it really take to recharge? And how often do we let that downtime stretch on, leaving us feeling even more drained? What if, instead, you use some of that time to do something that actually engages you, something that uses your mind or your body in a meaningful way? That's smart leisure, and it can be a powerful source of happiness. What I've been doing more recently is playing the piano, as well as learning languages on Rosetta Stone. I've been working on improving my Chinese. We can also bring flow into our work. Think about how you view your job. Do you see it as a paycheck, something to get through? Or do you see it as part of a bigger purpose? I think many of us who go into medicine originally saw our career as a bigger purpose, but some of us may have started thinking more of our job as really a paycheck. How can you shift back to when you felt like there was more purpose in your job? Some people see their work as a job, while others see it as a career. But those who see it as a calling report the greatest satisfaction. And it's not about title or pay. It's about finding meaning in what you do and seeing how your work makes a difference. Even roles that seem routine or overlooked, there's room to find flow and fulfillment. For example, in a study of hospital cleaners, some workers viewed their task as simply part of a job. But others viewed themselves as playing a role in patient care, improving the environment to help people heal. They described their work as bettering the daily lives of patients, visitors, and nurses. They set challenges for themselves, like how to get the job accomplished in a maximally efficient way, or how to help patients heal faster by making them more comfortable. They did tasks outside of their formal duties. They saw themselves as part of a larger, integrated whole, serving as part of a system that improved people's lives. This left them more engaged, and they reported greater job satisfaction. I know it can be hard after seeing a lot of patients, especially if there's a patient who gives you trouble about being unhappy with your recommendations or unhappy that you're running behind, to feel like what you're doing is really a calling. But I'm sure we've all had patients that we touched during some point of our career where they really appreciated the care we gave them and where that was really meaningful. One bad encounter can overshadow multiple good encounters. And so we have to practice actually focusing on those good encounters and reminding ourselves of all the good we do as physicians. When we can align our work with a sense of purpose and challenge, it becomes more than a task. It becomes a calling. I'm not saying that you have to work on your mindset to turn your job into a calling. I honestly don't see the practice of medicine as a calling for me, but I do see it as something fulfilling where I'm really of service and giving back to other people. Find what balance works for you. At its highest level, flow becomes something transcendent. It's not just about being absorbed in activity. It's about losing yourself in it completely. That state, sometimes called superflow, can be deeply fulfilling. There is a caveat. If you find certain activities consistently bring you to flow, that's wonderful. But be mindful. Even positive activities can become addictive if it begins to take over your life. If you find yourself constantly choosing that activity over spending time with loved ones or taking care of your responsibilities, then it may be time to pause and recalibrate. Balance is key. Living in flow is about presence. It's about being fully engaged in what you're doing, learning, and growing, and savoring the process. It's not something we stumble into. It's something we can practice and cultivate over time. So this week, I encourage you to pay attention to those moments where you feel most alive, most engaged. See if you can create more of those experiences for yourself in your work, your relationships, and your downtime. That's where real happiness thrives. Thank you so much for listening to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love it if you subscribe, left a 5-star review, or shared it with a friend. As always, keep growing, keep learning, and come back next week for another episode of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you. Don't forget to pick up your guide, 12 Financial Mistakes That Keep Physicians from Building Wealth. You can grab that guide at my website, www.growyourwealthymindset.com/12 financial mistakes. You'll also find that link in the show notes.